There's a moment that comes for every manipulator. A moment when they finally realize they picked the wrong person to mess with. Not because you fought back loud, not because you exposed them publicly, but because you were always 3 steps ahead and they never even knew you were paying attention. This is the story of how intelligence becomes a weapon they can't defend against. This is what happens when someone tries to break a mind sharper than their own. Every predator operates on the same assumption. The quieter someone is, the weaker they must be. That's their first error, their original sin, the one mistake that sets the whole catastrophe in motion. They look at you calm, observant, measured, and they translate it as naive, as simple, as easy prey. They think they're reading intelligence, but they're actually just reading their own projection onto you. Because people like this, manipulators, narcissists, they operate from a place of noise. Their confidence is loud. Their intelligence is performative. They need applause, validation, reaction to feel like they exist. So when they encounter someone quiet, someone grounded, someone who doesn't need external confirmation, they don't see strength. They see an opportunity. That's their fatal miscalculation. They approach you like you're some soft-minded puppet waiting for them to pull the strings. They think your kindness is gullibility. Your silence is confusion. Your patience is weakness. Your generosity is desperation. They build an entire fantasy version of you in their head. Helpless, needy, insecure, waiting to be fixed or broken, depending on their mood. They couldn't have been more wrong. See, what they don't understand is that quiet people aren't quiet because they're stupid. Quiet people are quiet because they're observant. They're listening. They're analyzing. They're taking notes on every inconsistency, every lie, every slip-up, every red flag you're carelessly waving around. While they're performing their grand manipulation, you're sitting there like a chess player watching a beginner move their pieces. You're not confused. You're entertained. You're watching them operate with all the sophistication of a broken calculator, trying to do complex mathematics. And that's the difference between real intelligence and fake confidence. They think they're geniuses because they can make up stories fast, because they can flip blame like a light switch, because they can cry on command and manipulate guilt like it's an instrument. They think they're masterminds because nobody's ever called them out before. But you're different. You're the first person they've met who sees through the tricks because you're not emotionally attached to believing in their illusions. You watch them like a scientist watches an organism under a microscope. Clinical, detached, observant. They were so busy trying to control you that they never noticed you were documenting them. Every lie they told, you filed it away. Every guilt trip they attempted, you analyzed the pattern. Every manipulation they tried, you saw the blueprint. Every inconsistency in their stories, you noticed. And they kept going, confidently performing, completely unaware that the person they thought was their victim was actually their audience, taking mental notes, watching the show, waiting to see how far they take it before the whole thing collapsed under its own weight. Then came the shift. Not a dramatic moment, not an explosion, just awareness clicking into place like a lock finally finding its key. One day, you stopped trying to understand them, and that's when you finally understood everything. You stopped asking, why would they do this? And started noticing, they always do this. You stopped feeling confused and started feeling clarity. The fog lifted. The puzzle pieces that seemed scattered suddenly formed a complete picture of who they really were. And that's when their entire strategy fell apart. See, manipulation only works when the target is emotionally invested in the illusion. When you're desperate to believe they're telling the truth. When you're hoping they'll change. When you're trying to find reasons their behavior makes sense. That emotional investment is the fuel that keeps the manipulation engine running. But the moment you stop believing in the illusion, the moment you accept the truth of who they are, the whole thing becomes transparent. Like you finally put on glasses that let you see through walls. Now, every word out of their mouth is suspect. Every action has an obvious motive. Every apology is clearly calculated. Every sweet moment is clearly tactical. The magic trick loses its mystery the second you see how it's done. And they can feel the shift. They notice you're not reacting the way you used to. You're not getting defensive when they blame you. You're not panicking when they withdraw. You're not desperately trying to fix things when they create conflict. You're just there, calm, observant, almost amused. That terrifies them, because your calmness is a mirror they didn't know was there. Suddenly, they're forced to see themselves without your emotional reaction to distract from the view. And what they see isn't a powerful manipulator. It's someone small, terrified, insecure, grasping desperately for control because they can't even control themselves. At this point, they start to panic. Subtly at first, they say things more forcefully, trying to convince you that their narrative is real. They over-explain, like repetition will change the truth. They test your buttons again, hoping maybe they just didn't push hard enough before. Maybe if they go further, you'll snap back into the role you used to play. But you don't. And that's when the real breakdown begins. Because they're not dealing with confusion anymore. They're dealing with someone who sees them completely. Someone who's not emotionally tangled in their narrative. Someone who can observe their behavior the way a therapist observes a patient, clinical and unattached. They try every manipulation in their arsenal, and none of it lands because you've already decoded every trick. It's like watching someone try to open a door you changed the locks on. They keep trying the old key, getting more frustrated each time it doesn't work. They don't realize the door was never really locked. You just walked out of the building. Your awareness became their downfall because it removed their greatest weapon, your doubt. They can't make you question reality anymore because you're not questioning it. You're observing it. You're documenting it. You're analyzing it with a clarity they can't penetrate. And the universe, in its quietly poetic way, makes sure they realize this. Not all at once, but in devastating increments. Watching you stop reacting. Watching you stay calm. Watching you move on. Watching you heal. Each moment is another reminder that they lost control of the narrative. Let's talk about something they'll never admit. You're smarter than them. Not in the way they measure intelligence, loud, performative, full of big words and bigger ego, but in the ways that actually matter. The ways that determine who survives psychological warfare and who doesn't. You're smarter emotionally. You can read people without needing them to explain themselves. You see patterns others miss. You understand human behavior at a level they can't reach because they're too busy being human to observe humanity. They operate from ego and impulse. You operate from intuition and wisdom. You're smarter strategically. While they were playing checkers, you were 3 moves ahead in chess. While they were setting traps, you were documenting the blueprint. While they were trying to control you, you were analyzing their behavior like it was raw data. Every move they made became evidence for you. You're smarter spiritually or psychologically. You understand that their behavior says nothing about you and everything about them. You see their manipulation as a reflection of their wounds, not a reflection of your worth. That psychological sophistication is something they simply can't match because it requires the kind of self-awareness they've spent their whole life avoiding. You're smarter relationally. You understand boundaries. You grasp consent. You comprehend reciprocity. Concepts that should be basic, but apparently aren't to someone who thinks relationships are about control. Your relational intelligence makes their tactics look like a child playing adult games. And here's the part that destroys them. They know it. Deep down, in the places they don't want to admit, they know you're smarter. That's actually why they targeted you. Not despite your intelligence, but because of it. They sensed your power and they wanted to prove they could break it. The predator chooses the strongest animal in the herd because breaking that one proves something about the predator's power. But they miscalculated the level of your intelligence. They thought they could contain it, control it, redirect it, turn it into a weapon against you. They thought your smartness would work against you because they twist it, make you second guess yourself, make you overthink everything, paralyze you with doubt. Except it didn't work that way, because your intelligence included the wisdom to recognize manipulation. Your smartness came with built-in lie detectors. Your analytical mind came with the ability to see patterns. Your intelligence came with intuition. It's like they tried to hack into a computer system and didn't realize the system had advanced cybersecurity they didn't even know existed. Every trick they pulled, your mind automatically processed it and filed it under manipulation attempt. Every lie they told, your intuition flagged it. Every inconsistency in their story, your analytical brain highlighted it in neon. They were playing poker against someone who could see all the cards. And the longer they played, the more obvious it became. They'd make a move, expecting you to react a certain way. And instead, you just smile like you already knew what the move was going to be. They'd try a new manipulation tactic, and you'd respond with such perfect calm because you'd already anticipated it. That's when they realized this person isn't confused. This person is intelligent. This person saw through me from the beginning. And nothing, absolutely nothing, hurts a manipulator's ego more than realizing they couldn't fool someone they thought was easy prey. It's one thing to lose a game. It's another thing to realize you were never playing against a novice. It's soul-crushing to understand that the person you tried to break was analyzing you the whole time, studying your weaknesses, documenting your patterns, waiting to see how far you'd go before your own behavior exposed you completely. That's the intelligence they underestimated. That's the mind they tried to trap and failed. That's the person they thought they were playing against and finally realized they never understood at all. Now comes the part where you watch their carefully constructed facade fall apart. It happens slowly at first, then all at once. They can't maintain the performance anymore because maintaining it requires your participation. It requires you to play along, to believe the narrative, to stay emotionally invested in their illusion. But you've checked out. You're no longer feeding the machine. And without your energy, their whole strategy suffocates. The mask doesn't slip gracefully. It doesn't fade away politely. It cracks. It breaks. It shatters under the weight of the truth they've been running from. You start noticing things that would have confused you before, but now make perfect sense. The way they suddenly become defensive when you stay calm. The way their confidence wobbles the moment you stop needing their reassurance. The way their charm stops working and they have nothing to fall back on except desperation. They start over-explaining simple things, talking in circles, repeating the same stories like broken records. Their logic doesn't hold up anymore because you're not emotionally distracted enough to let it slide. They panic internally, but the panic leaks out. Maybe they get more aggressive, thinking if they push harder, they'll finally break through your calm. Maybe they switch to victim mode, suddenly becoming hypersensitive, over-apologetic, trying to guilt you back into caring. Maybe they do both, 1 minute raging, the next minute crying, completely unstable because they've lost the control they were relying on. You watch it all with a kind of detached clarity. You're not angry anymore. You're not hurt anymore. You're just observing, documenting, confirming what you already knew. And they can feel your detachment like a physical thing. It's colder than any rage would have been, more final than any argument could be, because your detachment says, I don't need you to change. I don't need you to understand. I don't need anything from you anymore. That message hits different. Their whole identity was built on having power over you. When that power disappears, their entire sense of self collapses. Not dramatically at first, but internally, they're falling apart. They're replaying conversations, analyzing where they lost control, trying to figure out the exact moment you stopped being manipulated. They can't pinpoint it because it wasn't a moment. It was a process, a slow awakening, a gradual seeing through the illusion. One lie added to the previous lie until the weight of it all became so obvious that you couldn't miss it. And now they're stuck. They can't control you anymore. But they also can't let you go because that would be admitting they failed. So they oscillate. They try to pull you back in. They stalk your social media. They make their own posts clearly directed at you. They text, then delete, then text again. They try to create situations where you'll have to respond to them. But you don't respond the way they need. Your responses are measured, respectful but distant, clear but not cruel. You're not giving them anything to work with. No emotional fuel. No reaction to feed off. No drama to justify their behavior. And that emptiness they feel, that absence of the chaos they used to thrive on, that's their real punishment. Not because you're punishing them, but because without your energy feeding their narrative, they're forced to sit alone with themselves. And that's the one thing they've never learned how to do. In the end, they failed the most important intelligence test. Not a test of how smart their words were, or how clever their tricks were, but a test of how well they understood human psychology, how well they read people, how accurately they assess threats. They failed because they measured intelligence by volume, and they met someone whose intelligence was quiet. They measured strength by aggression, and they met someone whose strength was stability. They measured power by control, and they met someone whose power was self-awareness. These are three completely different languages, and they were trying to speak only one. Real intelligence isn't flashy. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need validation. Real intelligence observes, analyzes, strategizes, and acts with precision. It doesn't waste energy on performance. And that's what you were all along. Real intelligence. The kind that saw them completely and never needed to say a word about it. Because you understood something fundamental. Exposing someone doesn't require loud confrontation. It just requires letting them exist without your emotional participation. Once you stop feeding their narrative with your reactions, they become transparent to everyone, including themselves. That's the intelligent move they never saw coming. They expected you to fight, to expose them publicly, to tell everyone what they did, to gather allies against them, to seek revenge. All of those would have kept you in their orbit. All of those would have been reactions they could work with, manipulate, spin. But instead, you did the one thing they couldn't defend against. You simply moved on. You didn't announce your departure. You didn't make it a dramatic exit. You just quietly built a better life, quietly healed, quietly became untouchable, quietly evolved past them. And that calm, strategic retreat was the most intelligent move of all. Because now they're left standing in the ruins of their own manipulation, watching you shine from a distance they can't close. And the worst part for them is knowing you did it all without even trying to hurt them. You didn't need to. Your healing was enough. Your growth was enough. Your peace was enough. That's the intelligence they underestimated. That's the mind they tried to break and failed. That's the person they thought was simple and discovered too late was brilliantly, strategically, unshakably smart. Here's what they finally understand. Too late. They picked a fight with someone they were never qualified to fight. Not because you're willing to fight loud or dirty or mean, but because you fight with clarity. You fight with awareness. You fight by refusing to participate in their game. And you can't beat someone who won't play. They tried to write a story where you were the villain. You became the author who wrote them out of the narrative entirely. They tried to build a cage around your mind. You saw through the bars from the beginning. They tried to convince you that their version of reality was the only truth. You quietly held onto your own truth until it became obvious to everyone else too. And now they live with the consequences. Not punishment from you. Not revenge from the universe. Though the universe certainly had a role. But the natural consequences of trying to manipulate someone smarter than them. Of trying to break someone stronger than them. Of trying to control someone more aware than them. They discovered too late that you're too smart to be fooled. And that discovery is the prison they can never escape. Because every time they look at their reflection, they see the person who underestimated someone they should have never underestimated. Every time they remember you, they remember the moment they lost. Every time they think about your peace, your growth, your glow, they're reminded of everything they could have had if they'd recognized the value of what they held instead of trying to destroy it. That's the real consequence. That's the real loss. Not anything you did to them, but everything they lost by trying to hurt you. And the universe watched it all happen, quietly applauding someone who fought with intelligence instead of anger, with awareness instead of accusation, with growth instead of revenge. That's the version of you they feared most. Not because you'd hurt them, but because you evolved past them so completely that they became irrelevant to your story. If this message resonated, if you've experienced someone underestimating your intelligence and living to regret it, share this. Let the universe know you're stepping into the full recognition of your intellectual and spiritual power. Subscribe for more breakdowns of power dynamics, manipulation, and the evolution that comes from seeing clearly. Because the world needs more people who understand that real intelligence isn't measured by how loud you are, but by how clearly you see. And once you see clearly, nobody can fool you ever again. Stay intelligent. Stay aware. stay untouchable.